Good morning and welcome to Monday and a whole new week. We are looking today, because today is, in the United States, Memorial Day, a day that was instituted for considering the cost through the Civil War, and then later World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, etc., etc. A day that was set aside to attend to the graves of those that had been lost in battle. A time when the North and South was unifying, returning back to its old unity and honoring those that had been sacrificed in the conflict. Over 600,000, between 500,000 and 600,000 people. In fact, it's the second most that the U.S. has lost to war. World War II was the conflict that was greater as far as the casualty count. So here we are on this Monday, and thinking and focusing upon Memorial Day. We can think of the Jefferson Memorial, the Lincoln Memorial, and it's so that we remember. Now, why do we need memorials? Why do we erect or build memorials? Why do we establish memorials, statuary and plaques, and put them in parks and places along the road? Some people call them hysterical markers, because the kids become hysterical when the parents stopped to read the plaque. They have no sense of their history, and history needs to come to life. It needs to be memorialized. A couple years ago, I had the privilege to go and help serve a church in Vienna, Austria. We worked for the week on the physical building, several of us from our church, and then I rented a Fiat Panda, and we sandwiched ourselves into that Fiat Panda with just the barest of necessities and drove north from Vienna, Austria, up into Germany, and stopped for the night, stayed at a wonderful hotel, ate a wonderful German breakfast. Then we went to Dachau, and we visited the Dachau prison, one of the concentration camps, one of the death camps of World War II. We went to Dachau prison, and there that site has been preserved. And at first, very much against the wishes of the German government, they wanted to bulldoze it all, repurpose it, and simply forget about that horrible atrocity that had been visited upon Jews, Gypsies, and others, even Germans and Christians. Over 6 million had perished under the onslaught of the German cleansing. They had, at great cost, put their money together, had purchased that, and turned the whole thing into a memorial. Now, why did they feel the need to take such a macabre subject as a death camp where many people had suffered and died, and preserve it, and then build a memorial there that would remind them? Why would the Jewish people constantly use the phrase, never forget? Never forget. It wasn't to remain bitter, and it wasn't to exact reparations and punishment against the nation that had done that, but to serve as a warning to the rest of the nations and to all people. This can happen. We're not very far away from this. And the first thing we cannot do is we cannot forget. And so memorials were built all over the world to that event. Why? So that people wouldn't forget. Now that's something to avoid, and that's a warning. But what about something that is positive? Well, this week we're going to spend some time together focusing upon Joshua chapter 3, verse number 1 through chapter 4, verse 7. Who knows, we may take in a little bit more, take in a little bit less, may extend it into 2 weeks. We'll see how it goes. But we have the opportunity to focus upon building a memorial. Building a memorial. So I want to take a few moments this morning, build upon that thought that I just shared. Why do we need to build a memorial? Because we tend to forget. We forget. We want to forget the worst things. The whole world wanted to forget about the Holocaust. But the cost of forgetting about the Holocaust is that it gets revisited because people go back down that road, not obstinately, willingly, stubbornly forgetting where it leads. And we're only one generation away from forgetfulness, from it not being remembered. Now, if that's true of negative events, you would think, well, positive events, those are unforgettable. But couples often struggle with one or both of them forgetting exactly the day they met, forgetting exactly the day they married, missing it by a day or two. Men can miss it by a whole month, but I have witnessed women forgetting by a day or two what day. They knew it was a Saturday, for example, but what was the exact date? You would think that you could never forget such a great day as that, or that a parent would never forget the date of their child's birthday. But it happens. Some of the very best days that we experience, we have a tendency to forget. So what we're going to look at in this passage is how to build a memorial, what goes in to building a memorial. We're not going to study clearing land, clearing timber, digging up or cutting granite or pouring concrete. And what does it take to construct it? Well, we're going to look at some spiritual principles, some things that are contained for us in scriptures. In fact, we're told by the Apostle Paul, these things happened to them as examples for us, upon whom the end of the ages are come. We're living in the very end of the age. We're looking for the last day of the last great age. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for the consummation and the completion of everything. But meanwhile, here's what we can do. We can remember, and we can build a memorial so that we build a great story, that thing that we can point to that's tangible and real in our life, and say, let me tell you the rest of the story. Paul Harvey became famous for a little radio snippet that he entitled The Rest of the Story. And he would talk about the things that we had heard, but we didn't know the rest of the story. And those things were memorable. It was a great format, and it was a great way of letting us in on the rest of the story. We have the opportunity as believers to show the rest of the story. People will see something in our life. They'll be able to look at something tangible and real, something they can get their arms around, and something they can handle and touch. And then they can ask that question, when was this? How did that happen? Tell me about it. Then we have an opportunity to take that memorial that we have built and show them a testimony to the grace of God, a testimony to the love of our Heavenly Father. And it will possibly turn their world on its head, because it will challenge what they have been led to believe about God and about everything in the world. So we're going to be looking at building a memorial, and I want to at least get us started this morning by looking at this verse and drawing something from it so we can meditate upon it today as we talk about building a memorial. Joshua chapter 3, verse number 1, we're just going to read a couple verses. Early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan, where they camped before crossing over. This is after 40 years that had been imposed upon them because they voted against God's plan to move into the promised land. Now they come opposite of Jericho, and the last person has passed away that voted no. They simply had to wait. And now it's time to go in. How exciting. What a powerful, awesome time to realize we've wandered for 40 years in the wilderness. God has taken care of us. He's fed us. He's clothed us. Our clothes have not worn out. We've found water supply and food supply, and we have multiplied in this wilderness. Now it's time to go in. After 3 days, the officers went throughout the camp, giving orders to the people, when you see the ark of the covenant of the Lord your God and the Levitical priests carrying it. What did this symbolize? The very presence of God rested upon the ark of the covenant, the Shekinah glory, a fire at night, a cloud by day. This was the heart and the center of the camp of Israel. And this was a very tangible, real, physical expression of God's presence. Not only was the covenant ark, but the Shekinah glory cloud that came and rested upon it. So when you see the ark move, this is significant of the Lord giving orders to move, and He knows where He's going. So you would be best following Him. So here's the command. You are to move out from your positions and follow it. This was a standing order. When the glory cloud moves, when the Shekinah cloud moves, follow it. Break camp and follow it. This is no exception. And now God is going to lead them into the promise that He's given them. He goes on to say, then you will know which way to go, because you will see the Lord's movement. You will see that literal, physical expression of His Shekinah glory. You will see the ark of the covenant. At the very least, when the ark moves, go where the ark goes. When the ark of the covenant moves, move with it. Then you will know which way to go, since you have never been this way before. That's part of the scary thing about following God, is that He leads us into places we've never been before. There's change, transformation, and when we move to a new place, it can either be exciting or scary. And for most people, it tends to be scary before it's exciting. You've never been this way before. There's places that God wants to move you and move me. We've never been there before. We have no idea what to expect. If we're not careful, we'll simply fear it, because that's our default position. And He tells them, you've never been this way before, but keep a distance of about 2,000 cubits, which would compute, I think I calculated it, think of it in terms of about a football field length. So you're standing at the goal line, and at the other goal line, there you can see the priests carrying the ark. That is the buffer zone that you need to keep between yourself and that ark of the covenant. Do not go near it. This is about following God, but it's not about such a familiarity that you have a contempt for God. There is a distance, which means that they had to the left and the right, in front and behind, that they had to keep a buffer zone around that ark. This signified His presence. And there needs to be a tremendous respect for the presence of God. and an immediate obedience to follow his nudge, to move with his presence, to go with him, and yet at the same time, not to treat him with contempt and such familiarity that we lose sight of the glory of the Shekinah, the fire by night and the cloud by day. So the very first steps in making a memory with God or building a memorial, which is a lasting, significant event that we can point to and explain to people and give them the rest of the story, is that you follow him. And you follow him with a great and awesome respect. The Lord bless you. Have a great Memorial Day. And we'll see you tomorrow as we continue on building some around the idea of building a memorial. Lord bless you. Have a great day, remembering the cost, the price of freedom. We'll see you tomorrow.